Why I don't work for Bill Gates.
Okay.
Okay, so what
rich.
time is Paws in the Park?
It's at 10 o'clock.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I
10 to
want to
2.
welcome you to the Public Health and Safety Committee.
I'm gonna have to do that. I have a really.
Excellent. My name is Brendan Jensen. I'm from District 6.
Sandra Clare, District 2.
I'm Lisa Robertson with the City Attorney's Office.
I'm Lisa Pinkley, Supervisor of our Animal Control Unit at the Topeka Police Department.
And Councilwoman Ortiz will be joining us shortly. Shall we wait to vote for a committee chair until Councilwoman Ortiz gets here?
I wouldn't.
Okay. Well, since I sort of called this meeting to order and have requested it be held, I would volunteer to lead the charge on reviewing our animal control ordinances. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of electing me the chair?
Aye.
Hooray. The next order of business is to approve the minutes from the November 4th meeting from 2016. Are there any objections to the meeting?
wasn't
The minutes
here,
as written? Neither was I, so
Right.
I would move they be approved as written then.
Okay.
Me too. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Okay. So the next order of business is to discuss broader animal control in our community. As we've worked through some other issues that folks have brought to our attention, we've realized that some of them are rather old, confusing. We just don't have a clear picture of what our community wants in terms of animal control, what we're willing to allow, the rules and regulations, how people can go through with registering animals, that sort of thing. So what I wanted to try and do today was to ask a series of questions. We can try to come up with the scope of really what we want to review as part of this committee. An excellent question is, do we want this to be a definitive list of animals? So you can only own animals that are approved as part of this process. Do we want to set limits on the number of animals that people can have? If somebody goes and takes a training class and gets certified to have a specific type of animal, would that then be allowable once they're, deemed approved? That sort of thing. So basically, how far do we want to go with this? To what length? And then, I would suggest we go back and talk to the public and get their input on some of these things. I know, Lisa, you have done a substantial amount of work already in reviewing the ordinances we have and have sort of uncovered numerous cans of worms as part of that. But really, that was what I was hoping to accomplish in the meeting today, was basically set the scope of what we think we want to try and accomplish.
Okay, but going back to the February minutes from the governing body, it was brought to this committee for the miniature pigs,
That's correct.
not for the entire ordinance.
So when we discussed that in the council meeting, we had talked about doing it in two phases. One would be to approve the miniature pig aspect and then to take a broader look at everything. And when we did that in the council meeting, we weren't able to do it in two phases. And so the motion was to send everything to this committee to review
No.
because we couldn't have done it.
The motion was, it says, Councilmember Jensen reported staff has determined a need for more comprehensive review of city code regarding the matter, miniature pigs.
Which is, well, at the time, we were discussing broader animal control.
So the minutes are wrong.
It's a possibility, yes. So there isn't a way to work on miniature pigs without solving all of animal control. It's just not possible. We tried to do that at the council level. It couldn't be done, so that's why we're here doing it in committee.
I would beg to differ. But, and if these minutes are wrong, we need to find that out, because our task, according to this, is just to talk about the miniature pigs.
And we can, but that won't solve the problem. We tried to do that at the council level, and we weren't able to
Okay,
reach
and
a
then
consensus
my
on
next
that.
question is, how do we know there are problems?
I would defer to Lisa on that.
Okay.
Just in terms of looking through the code, there's a whole lot of just ambiguities and ordinances that are directly in competition with each other, that sort of thing.
Right, Councilmember Claire, when I did the primary review for this thing, we had initially decided we were gonna put in a provision that just addressed miniature pigs. So we put that in there, but then in doing so, we figured out that it has tentacles that go out to all kinds of other things, because then
Right.
questions were raised about, okay, well, then do we need to have the pigs vaccinated, and like we do dogs and cats, and do they need to be included under the cruelty to animals provision? like dogs and cats. And then the other Lisa and I talked, and we kind of came up with a list of what would be categorized as domestic animals, and that would be probably dogs, cats, miniature pigs. So then in looking at other provisions of the code, it would talk about allowed animals, and it would have a list, and then it talked about exotic animals in the middle of that list, and that was snakes and all kinds of things. It just, when I went to see where to plug in references to miniature pigs, I became more and more confused. So that's when I thought it would be a good idea to kind of revamp the whole thing at one time. We can certainly go through here and try to figure out where to insert miniature pigs in the equation.
Like you've done.
But there's a couple of places where we really do need to fix it. And the one that came to my mind first and foremost was, for me, and you may have a different opinion, Lisa, but the exotic animals and prohibited animals. They were kind of meshed into a provision that said it's allowed, but these aren't allowed. It just wasn't clear. It
But
didn't
it's
make
not about
sense.
how many dogs you should have and what kind of dogs, and it wasn't all, do you find problems with all that?
I think those are policy issues.
Well, and that's why I was asking the question is, what do we want the scope of this review to be? Do we want to limit the number of dogs in the community? I don't know. Some
Do
of
we
my
have- We don't have a
constituents.
problem with that.
I don't know if there is or not necessarily, but organizationally,
Yeah.
I have a big issue with how this is written. It's just not organized well, so that anybody who picks it
Right,
up
so
can
it's
logically
organization,
find
not
out where to
the,
go.
okay.
Yeah, and now you may have, ideas on what struggles you have, Lisa, but
Well, when we're talking about the limit of animals, I really don't see a big problem with that in the city other than vet care. Most folks cannot provide vet care for one animal, let alone 5. So we do want to run across that quite a bit, that if a person has 5 animals and 2 of those 5 need to go to the vet, they just can't afford it, and consequently, the animals suffer because of that. So that may be a good reason to maybe limit the amount of pets that
So I don't know if
folks
we
can have.
should get into all, I don't know if that's our scope.
And that's what we're just here to discuss today, is what's the
I
scope.
would just, I would do the organization with the pigs. If there's other nuisances brought up later, or if we, I haven't heard of any.
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for being late. Have we voted on the chair already?
Yes.
Are you the chair?
I am the chair.
Okay, then if you would please make sure everybody's held accountable for
Yes.
talking, so we don't overtalk. I just want to make sure where we're at. Are we on a discussion 4?
Yes, so we're trying to set the scope of what we intend to do with regard to animal control.
Okay. I have a couple things I want to say. Number one, we did this a couple of years ago, right, Lisa? And I thought that the state, no, I'm talking about the big one that we did with the dogs and the pit bulls and all of that. That was a few years ago, maybe even 4 years ago. But anyway, I thought state statute said how many dogs that you could have in the city limits. Am I correct?
The state says 19.
Right,
And then you
right.
have to have a kennel license after
Right.
that, or a breeder's, whichever
Right.
they're doing. But as far as our ordinances are concerned, you can have as many as you want, just as long as they have a city license and they're well taken care
It
of.
was my understanding that we followed the state statute. That was my understanding when we went through all of that.
No, they can have as many animals as they want, just as long as they're taken care of and they have city licenses. Dogs and cats, that doesn't include fowl or livestock.
Well, I was just talking dogs, just talking dogs.
Just talking dogs, they can
Yeah.
have as many as they want, up to 19.
Up to
And then if we
19.
go to a residence where they have 19 or more, we will call the state offices
Right.
and have them go out and
Right.
investigate
So
them.
that's what I was looking for. So we're under state statute that we can only have 19, and you're right, then we have to go that extra step.
Yes.
And it was my understanding as well that we were just about the little piggy that they wanted. And then I know that you had mentioned to revamp this. And I think, Brendan, before we revamp it, I know we spent hours on, when we did it a few years ago with the pit bulls and all of that.
Yes.
because you're gonna have everybody coming out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair, blah, 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 blah. So we can't get it done in a short amount of time.
No, and I
So
never intended
if
for this
I
to
may
be
finish,
quick.
please. So if we could just figure out
Mm-hmm.
about the pigs, because I thought that was the issue, and then we could come back
Mm-hmm.
and do, I don't mind coming back and do the rest of it, but I too was prepared just to talk about the pigs.
And I'll go back and review the video, but that was not what I had requested. We attempted to do just the pigs in the council meeting, and that was not successful. So there wouldn't be a reason for us to defer something that was unsuccessfully handled there to a committee for it to be done here, sent back up.
Well, I think we couldn't agree on the pigs, and that's why we, instead of tabling it, we sent it to a committee. We thought it needed to go to committee.
I'll have to go back and review. My understanding of the meeting
But regardless,
was. Mm-hmm.
let's try to figure out what we're gonna do today so we can move forward and
Yes.
then be better prepared at the next one.
Well, and that was what the intent of this meeting was to set the scope. And part of the reason why I wanted to do that was because of, the history where I know there's a significant amount of work that has been done, but in looking at what's left, there are gaping holes in what we have, is my understanding, and Lisa could speak to this better than I can, because there was a lot of foundational work that's been done with regard to pit bulls and that sort of thing, and I certainly don't, unless there's a huge outcry from the public, I don't see a need to revisit things that have been recently looked at. There's a large amount of it that hasn't been.
Well, I would
I've
like to
gotten
know what large amount you're talking about.
and Lisa could better explain it than I can. I will share that I have gotten numbers of complaints from people where there are households with 5 dogs or so, and it's a problem. So I don't know that relying on the state statute of 19 is sufficient for the community. That's
Well, I
just my
think,
experience.
and if I may, when we studied that, they
Mm-hmm.
have to have state approval to have that many dogs. Or
it's over.
and I'd like to pull those minutes from our meetings
Mm-hmm.
because, I thought that was a lot of dogs too, but
Mm-hmm.
they have to have so much space, they have to
Mm-hmm.
have so many kennels, they have to, and it's usually people that rescue dogs that have them, and I thought,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
if I'm not mistaken, that there was only like 5 people in Topeka that had those approvals. We looked up that, so there was a lot of legwork and a lot of time spent in that, so I don't think that was a problem.
And
So what you have to really be careful with is you have to watch out that my neighbor Johnny has too many dogs, and I'm upset with that.
Sure.
Now, I agree when the dog catchers go out there and they see that these dogs are not taken care of, then that's a different issue, and then we have to handle that. But I don't understand, and I'd like to see what kind of gate poles gaps we have, because we covered a lot.
Well, and that's part of what we're here to do today.
Councilmember Ortiz, I did not, when I did this overview or review, touch the dangerous dog piece. I didn't touch I think it was the service monkey piece. There were some that I didn't touch because they were very recently reviewed, and I really didn't see any need to
This
get back
isn't-
into those.
This
But
isn't the dangerous dog, this is the pit bull, and I think there was a difference.
the pit bull has been repealed from what I saw.
It was repealed in 2010, yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
so that's been repealed.
Okay.
But what I saw and the things that troubled me were the definitions. They weren't really complete, and some of them weren't. I don't think they weren't elaborate enough to really understand what fit under which definition. So I kind of did that, and then I saw a lot of duplication. For instance, for the dogs, it had cruelty to dogs and this and the other. But then it had the exact same provisions for cats. And so then we'd have to do the exact same provision for mini pigs. So what I did there was try to come up with a way to just combine it so it addressed dogs, cats, and mini pigs, and they were all addressed in one thing. So there's not 3 different sections that say exactly the same thing, basically. So it's those kinds of revisions.
Well-
In addition to the exotic animal piece, I do think that
If I
needs to
may.
be addressed.
If I may continue that, and that just goes with the turnover with attorney.
Yes.
Every attorney
Absolutely.
is different, and they feel comfortable with this, and that's what they present. And now you're coming along and you're uncomfortable. I don't think it has anything to do with what's right or wrong. It's just what we feel comfortable with or what we want to change. And that's just something I'd like to see. And I would like to see you research, give me a list of everything and like that was done and appealed, repealed or whatever. And let us search all of that because a lot of legwork was done by Councilwoman Hiller. And I know there was a lot of good things that came out of that. We had a lot of people to the table. We had animal control. We had, I can't think of her name. She was like a vet, but she was right on target. Do you remember her name, Lisa?
Yeah, do you remember the name of the vet? Because I remember
Karen knows her.
Councilmember Hiller talking about her.
Yeah, she was right on target with a lot of stuff.
Right.
And
She and I have talked about that. And to be very honest, I don't want to revisit things that have been recently done. All of that work, our goal is to build on our previous successes. So, because you're absolutely right, there was a ton of work put in that. And there's a lot of it that we certainly don't need to redo. And I don't want to, especially for the time that would take.
Correct.
One thing that I do want to make sure we're very clear in is I want to have a single thing that somebody can go and look. So if indeed we are pointing to authority to the state for some of their rules and requirements, I want us to put that in our ordinance that
I
we
thought that
defer to
was.
that. So that
That's
when
not.
somebody goes to look at it, they have all the information they need. It's a one-stop shop, so they know exactly what they can and can't do and what the rules are requiring that. Because otherwise, they have to go to us, to the county, to the state, and people don't do that. And then we wind up with problems where they just simply don't know because, and I do agree it is their responsibility to look, but if we can make it easy, then it's much easier for animal control and for our citizens to figure out what they can and can't do. So, sorry.
I'm not sure I agree with that either, because I figure if you want to know about the city, you look under city. If you want to know about county, you look under county. If you want to know about state, you look under state. I'd hate to,
Well, and I
mesh
don't
it all,
necessarily think we
but-
need to copy and paste,
but-
just point to.
but I read through this. I think this is great. I only found one error on page 25. We said 2 miniature pigs and not 1. It had been said 3, and then we switched to 2.
Didn't we switch to 1 after that? Ultimately 1. Didn't it say ultimately 1?
so what are you saying, Sandra? It's what? It's two, what should it be?
2. They have 1.
I thought we did 1, too.
It had been 3.
Yeah, it does say 1.
It's 2, because I made the motion to make it 2.
Okay.
No
Because
more
I
than
think
1.
you had said 3. But I think this is great. I think that miniature pig's added where it needs to be. So what you have done, I think works. So I would just need to know what doesn't then.
Well, and I certainly am not expecting any answers on any of this today. What I'd hoped to accomplish today, like I said, was to try and set the scope of what we want to do. I really appreciate your institutional knowledge on what has been done in the past. I think that's critical as we try to figure out exactly what we want to try and accomplish going forward. And part of it, it's looking through and identifying the weaknesses that we have in our code and where it's confusing and sort it out. And again, if everyone thinks it's fine, I'm perfectly okay with that.
I was going to say too, I had looked through, when I did my initial overview, I looked to see what, the dates on which the last amendments were made, I believe on all of these. And there were some in 2010, some in 2014, but a lot of it hadn't been touched for a long time. So that's what I tried to focus more so on. For instance, definitions. I think sometimes it's really hard to bring up revamping a whole definition section or something because it's kind of hard to go through the whole process. It's kind of a pain. But I think it's probably a very good idea to do it at the time we're trying to incorporate the miniature pigs into this Title VI. Might as well do it now. But again, I didn't go back into the 2014 amendments or even some of the 2010 because I know you guys did a whole heck of a lot of work on the those dangerous dogs and the pit bull repeal and all that.
Well, and if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Angela, do you have access to any of our notes from back then, from Jenny? Because I know we have. If we could pull those notes, Lisa, those minutes from our meetings, I think that would be helpful. Of why we kept it the way that we did, because I know we went through everything tooth and nail. But Angela, if you could pull those and get that to us, I think that would be great. I guess my only question is, because you were on board, Lisa, and you told us then what you seen the issues were, and I thought we tried to revamp them for you. Is it not revamped enough? Did you find in going back out there, well, we maybe should have tightened up here or loosened up here or something like that?
Councilwoman Ortiz, are we talking about pit bull ordinance repeal in 2010 or?
Just all together from, you know, I mean, because that's what she's saying, that some of our definitions are not very strong. So with whatever you're trying to prosecute, are you finding that too, that maybe?
I believe some areas are vague, but we are able to enforce the ordinances as they're written as of right now.
And what do you consider vague? Which ones?
Well, I would have to actually read some of the ordinances and get back with you on that to where I could
That'd be
just
great.
underline a sentence that I thought was vague. I really haven't pinpointed anything right now,
Okay.
but I remember certain ordinances being vague in
Okay.
the past.
I would respectfully request that from you.
Yes, that would
Okay.
be very helpful,
Okay.
actually.
Certainly.
And, you know, I'm not in a hurry for, I don't know about them, because I want you to take your time. I don't want to revisit this again.
Okay.
You know, so take your time
Yes.
and talk to your,
Meet with you and we can partner up and,
well, I want to
Okay,
know
go
from you. I want to
Okay.
know from you.
Okay.
Then Lisa has to do, we got to
Okay.
tell Lisa how to,
okay.
yeah, how
And I
we
think
want
we
it
probably
done.
shouldn't include the city prosecutor because he is the person that has to
Right.
prosecute the
Right.
cases, so.
Right, and he might be able
He
to
works
shed some
with
light
me
on
and
that
we
too.
have to-
Right. How
Yes.
come
to
he's
get
not
that
here?
done.
How come he's not here?
I did not invite him to come because I didn't think we were talking about prosecution
Okay.
and enforcement, but I'll have him
That
come
is
to
a
the
good
next
point, though. It
meeting.
would be helpful to find out. I mean, if we're going to crack this open and fix it, at least the
If
first
you're
where it
saying
has
it's
issues.
broke, we need to know where to fix it.
Absolutely, and that's why I want to ask these questions.
But I need to know from you guys, so I can tell them what we expect out of them and how to do their job, and what we expect.
Okay,
So.
I can certainly get that.
That's what, you know, so Timon's not, because she might not agree with what, but that's our decision to make.
I think
but-
my animal control officers could probably shed some more light on that too,
that's
because I'm
fine.
sure they have some feelings
Absolutely.
over that, and we can all get together and they can email their responses to me, and I'll compile a list.
I
what I
think that
think
would
we
be
need to look
great.
at.
I think that would be great, because they're the ones that's working it. I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'd be taking some dogs, but that's okay.
Councilwoman Claire.
When I researched this and I was reading, what is it, the national guidelines for animal control? What's that called?
NACA, National Animal Control
Yeah,
Association.
maybe. Anyway, I was reading that, and I was also reading up on some other cities' ordinances. But I was confused on one part where it said it had to already been deemed a nuisance for us to include it in an ordinance. Do you know what they're talking about?
I wouldn't.
That it had to be, so you don't have like a nuisance ordinance, and it has to be in there before you can, don't know what I'm talking about?
The only nuisance ordinance we have on the books right now is an unspayed female in season. She would be considered a nuisance, and that'd be nuisance dog. and
Okay,
that's it.
so would you have to only be allowed 6 dogs? Would it have to been deemed a nuisance in the city to have more than 6 dogs? That's what I understood it was saying.
I don't think so.
Not to my knowledge. Mm-mm.
Okay.
And I'm thinking too, even though the state law allows for 19 dogs, up to
Dogs and
19
cats.
dogs and cats, and we can talk about this offline, but I was thinking if the city, as a charter city, home rule city, wanted to, narrow that's certainly something they could do, but I don't even know if we have issues in that regard with number of dogs or cats.
We do visit a lot of residences that have a number of dogs. I'm saying 5 or 6. And if they're adequately taken care of, that's
they're
fine, and
fine.
they have city licenses. But if they're being neglected because the owner can't afford to take them to the vet, therein lies the problem, I think, is people don't take their animals to the vet, and then they get sick, and then we have a cruelty case on our hands because there's too many animals for this person to handle. And I think that's the biggest reason why certain cities in Kansas implement the limit on animals that a person can
How
own.
many are there? of that?
Well, ma'am, I
1,
know,
2,
oh, you mean limit on animals?
no, how many? people have you seen that can't take care of the animals? I mean, there's 6 in the Topeka, 1.
Oh my, there's several. I'd have to actually go through all the run sheets and check that out, but I can tell you right now, there's several, especially over on the east side. Several people own several animals, and they don't adequately take care of them, and they're borderline cruelty cases, and we ask them to take the animals to the vet and give them a certain time to do that, and then they need to show us a vet receipt showing what the vet told them to do. And that's expensive, and they typically don't do it, and then we end up taking the dog on cruelty. And a lot of times they're not sterilized, and they're procreating and causing other problems down the road. So there's a lot of issues that come with owning more than,
When you
1 or
get too
2
many, and
dogs.
then if they're not looked after properly, then you get a pack, and that's a danger to society there if they're revert to their wild state.
They can get aggressive more than one.
So, yes, ma'am.
Lisa, I would like for you to pull the state statute for us so we can read that, if you would.
Me, Lisa, right?
Yep, yeah.
Lisa R.
If you will pull that and send that to us so that we could read that and how it reads, because it's my understanding, it was appropriate, deemed, and I thought at that time, and I hope the minutes will reflect that, that there was only 5 kennels, that people that had kennels. So if you could get that to us before the next meeting, that'd be great.
I can do that.
Thank you.
So one other question to sort of throw out in general to discuss is, we had a situation where someone wanted to keep bees, and a neighbor several doors down had a documented allergy to bees, deadly allergy. Right now, we don't prohibit you from having a pet, which in this case, the bees would have been pets. They were cared for by the owner. We don't have anything preventing that person from keeping bees, and it really harassed the person several doors down who, was afraid to go out of their house for fear of being stung, and then possibly have a serious medical issue. How would we want to address that, or do we? Yes, ma'am.
Well, Mr. Jensen,
Yeah.
my neighbor burns and my grandson has asthma. There's nothing I can do. He's on his property and he's burning. I have to take the necessary steps to bringing him in.
And that's understandable.
And I mean, there's a lot of people that are allergic to bees that don't have beehives. So I just think that's something maybe we shouldn't touch. I mean,
And I'm okay with that.
yeah. I tell you, I have one of my constituents about this potbelly pig that their neighbor had too, and the urine of that broke her husband out, and he was allergic to it, the smell and all of that. So they don't want this to happen because they know their neighbors are going back to get that. I mean, it's always going to affect somebody,
Agreed.
and that's kind of sad,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people want to be able to do what they want to in their own home.
Agreed.
So I'm forced to put up a fence. I don't know if it's going to keep the fumes, but it'll keep my grandson from going closer to the.
Sure. And that's why I bring it up, just to have a discussion. Again, I don't have a feeling one way or the other. Yes, ma'am.
And my thoughts are, if they have a bee hive, they're probably safer than just walking out and there's bees just out all the time, because the bees are going to stay at that hive, where they could get stung walking out with any bee.
Yeah.
So I agree with
Okay.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Okay.
I mean, I understand.
Absolutely, I do. You feel bad for those folks, but
Yes,
at the end
I
of the
do.
day, how far do we want to
Exactly.
go is what we're trying to determine here. So, okay. That was the list of questions I had on basically trying to set the scope and figure out what we want to do with this. Anything to add?
So it's my understanding we're going to revisit this. We're going to wait for Mrs. Pinkley's
Yes.
report, wait for some other documents that Lego's going to bring us and provide us, and that Angela will try to provide us those. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So everybody goes out and gathers their research. We'll come back and we'll meet again.
Okay.
After when essentially it's gathered, we've had ample time, and then yes, at that point, let's look through what everyone has done in the past, try to figure out exactly what bits and pieces we want to try and make changes to, if indeed there are any. And then from there, then we'll discuss what's necessary to accomplish those.
Okay.
So-
And then if one more last thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I see that Mr. Wiley, Zoo Wiley is here, and one of our officers, and I don't know if they have anything to add, or they're just sitting in, and I'd like to hear from them if they do have something to add.
I'm just sitting here.
Okay?
I'm Lieutenant Joe Perry.
And you might have to come to the microphone for
Yeah,
the.
sorry.
For the. Thank you for both for being here.
Sorry, I'm Lieutenant Joe Perry. I'm in charge of the Animal Control Unit. I'm the administrative lieutenant for support operations for the Topeka Police Department. And I was just here with Officer Link Pinkley as a technical resource if you had questions.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would prefer that we find out what was really voted on in council meeting, because I really hate to do all this and go back to council and they're, why did you do that? You know, that wasn't your charge. That's what I would like to go back and look at that tape.
Yeah, I will do that.
And determine
And Angela
if,
can do that, yeah.
if in fact we're supposed to be doing, looking at all of it.
So if indeed, and I'm also happy to ask the council to direct us to go back and look at some of these things, if indeed, because I do feel like there's some parts in here that we do need to look at. So I'm perfectly happy to put a new resolution forth and ask that the council grant us the authority to review some of these things. And maybe what we need to do is meet again after we try to identify where we think some of the weak points are, and then present that to council and say, just in the general review, we have discovered that we think there's weak points here, 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 and here. Would you authorize us to go through and correct all that as part of this, the other work that we're doing?
I don't think we need that authorization.
Okay.
That's what, I think that's what our committee does. I think we can.
Agreed.
If our committee agrees to work on that, I don't
Okay.
think we need to go to council for authorization. We
Okay.
can work on it and have staff work on it.
Is that okay with you then?
But I understand what
Okay.
I understand
still
what.
think-
I understand
what
what
I'm saying.
Sandra's saying.
Uh-huh.
If we decide we want to work on that,
Yeah.
we don't need authorization, but I
Okay.
understand what Sandra's saying,
Sure.
the task that brought us here.
Yeah, well, and I absolutely agree, to go back and take a look at that. That's not a big deal. At least then we'll know what was said there, because, it's been quite some time. So, but if memory serves, that was what I was attempting to ask the council, was to send everything here, because we were trying to do all of it within the one change, and that wasn't going to work very well.
And Angela, if
So-
you can see if it was 1, 2, or 3 pigs. I know it's 2.
Yeah, it was two. I know it was two, but then we said one, because I suggested one. I think that's why you wrote it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to clarify something,
Uh-huh.
Councilmember Jensen. So Lisa and Lisa
Yes?
will work together to try to at least find some common ground on what we think needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then would you like us to come back and talk with you within X number of weeks? Just to give us a general time frame that we need to work within?
I disagree. I think she needs to get her research, you need to get your research, and then we'll ask you to, when we come back, and then we'll
Well,
ask you
she's
to work
asking for the
together.
amount of time they have to accomplish the research. Is 6 weeks sufficient, or do you
Yeah.
want 8 weeks?
6 weeks is fine.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
So,
Yeah, I think we're good.
If we give them 6 weeks to go and
Mm-hmm.
do their respective research and then bring that back to the committee.
And then we'll see,
Correct. Then we'll determine whether or not we need to charge,
Mm-hmm.
we'll call you Lisa A and you Lisa 1. Then we'll give you the charge to whether or not we want to go through and correct some of these, if that's what you're,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fine.
I think that's a long,
6 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
is that 2?
I think we could do it inside of
Probably.
6.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I think so.
They could probably do it by
Yeah.
the end of the month.
Okay. So then we would meet the first part of May?
Yeah, I think that would work.
Yes, that works.
Is that okay with you? Okay, all right, I'm fine with that.
So we're basically supposed to extract the vagueness out of the
Yes.
Yeah.
ordinances, right?
Find the
But
holes.
I would say, Councilmember Jensen, Councilmember Ortiz, we probably do need to communicate with each other so that we can figure out where the vagueness is, because I have to work with prosecution, and we have, even though there's some definitions in here that maybe we've been able to just work through because we've had to work through it,
Sure.
I'm sure that Lisa, too, has an idea of, how how that would make their lives easier if they could have it defined a different way or approached a different way, because it's all
Yes.
about making it easy for them in animal control and making it easier for the prosecutors
And
as
I think
well.
it'd be
We want
helpful
a
to have
clean,
prosecution
tight
help
case.
with that if they could.
Yes,
That
I'm
way
gonna
we've
bring
got
in-
both sides of it, so
I'm
we
gonna
have
bring
some
some-
idea
I'm
what,
gonna bring them in.
where our deficiencies are.
Yeah.
So,
With the caveat that we're gonna say what we're gonna change.
Yeah.
right.
And that's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying. There's nothing wrong with communicating, but I don't want you to influence her and I don't want her to influence you. I want it to be, this is what I need, and then us decide where we want to change it.
I could certainly tell Lisa what I think needs to be changed, because it's so vague, and then you can offer your input. How, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So bring those back to the committee, and then we'll decide what we're doing from there.
Okay.
Excellent. Anything else for the good of the cause? With that, I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get with Seth. And, or else, I don't know, I think it's gonna be mainly Seth, because he does the animal control stuff.
Yes.
Code docket.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
And then,
I don't drink, but I can.